everyone, and welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Sling. I am Mike Barner. He is Kirien Sprecher, and we come to you every Wednesday to give you the information that you need to win your fantasy basketball leagues. Kirien, we had a week hiatus there for the All-Star break. We were told we could take the week off, which worked out well with vacation plans. How are you 2 weeks later?
I'm doing great, Mike. Very, very interesting time in the fantasy basketball landscape. Some big injuries opening up some, huge opportunities for a lot of players. And, the fantasy playoffs are right around the corner.
Yeah, so we're going to start off there with two injuries of note here on the Portland Trailblazers. So Deni Avdija did not play yesterday against the Timberwolves with that back ailment. Now, he lasted just 1 minute into Sunday's game against the Suns before leaving with that injury. He has missed 6 of the last 10 games for the Trailblazers. Back injuries are tricky, and to complicate matters for the Trailblazers, they announced yesterday that Shaedon Sharpe is going to be reevaluated in 4 to 6 weeks. So, Kirien, we've got Avdija with the back injury. Sharpe's out at least 4 to 6 weeks. How are things looking here in Portland from a fantasy perspective?
Yeah, I think Sharpe is an easy drop, obviously. Yep. He probably might not even play again during the regular season. The Avdija situation, I think you have to hold him, even though he might be out for an extended period here. A lot of rumblings that this has been going on, for a while, even before he started missing games. So that doesn't look good. Obviously, he's had a ton of usage this season too. So that's going to be tough for Portland to navigate. But this is Scoot Henderson territory. This might be the theme of the show, but there's going to be a lot of players that are super talented and that we've both been really high on that are finally going to get an opportunity here down the stretch. I think Scoot Henderson should be rostered in a majority of leagues. I know, maybe Avdija comes back and Henderson's still playing off the bench. He still has some efficiency concerns for those in category leagues, but this kid is uber talented. He was a lottery pick for a reason. He was, going to be the future franchise player for the Portland Trailblazers at one point. Maybe that's not in the cards anymore, but I think he's going to get a ton of usage here down the stretch, and I think he's definitely a player that needs to be rostered in a ton of leagues. Obviously, depending on how deep your league is, obviously, if Avdija misses extended time, Drew Holiday becomes like a must roster in basically every league. Toumani Camara still with those efficiency concerns. I'm not boosting him up too much given the Sharpe news, but yeah, Scoot Henderson, Drew Holiday, Jeremy Grant are all going to get major boosts with Sharpe out, and then we'll get even another boost if Avdija has to miss extended time.
Last night, Henderson had 19 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. He played 29 minutes off the bench against the Timberwolves. He doesn't have any minute restrictions anymore, so yeah, he should be right around 30 minutes a night moving forward. I did have some questions about Jeremy Grant on X yesterday. Remember, Jeremy Grant is basically just points. He's not going to give you many rebounds. He's not going to give you many assists. He's basically points. Amazingly, he is going to have to play in March and April. This is all foreign to him. He's going to be playing towards the end of the season. But the Trailblazers need him, and they definitely need a scoring. Sharpe scoring over 20 points a game. Avdija is obviously their leader in just about everything. So, Jeremy Grant, if you need points, remember, only if you need points. If you're expecting overall production, you're not going to get that from Jeremy Grant. Some more bad injury news yesterday. Hopefully, this is not anything significant, but Jalen Johnson left in the first quarter against the Wizards with a hip flexor injury. He reached for a rebound, grabbed his hip, came down the floor, made a basket quickly on a jumper, and then asked to be pulled out and did not come back into the game. Now, they were playing the Wizards. After the game, Quinn Snyder said that Jalen Johnson is going to be reevaluated today. He didn't think it was anything serious. However, the Hawks' next game is Thursday against the Wizards. So, Kirien, I would not be surprised if Jalen Johnson sits at least one game as a precaution here. But as bad as the Jalen Johnson situation was last night, Jonathan Kuminga made his Atlanta Hawks debut. He played 24 minutes. Now, we talked about they played the lowly Wizards. So Take this stat line with a grain of salt. 24 minutes, he had 27 points. 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 3 3-pointers. So we got a lot going on with the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, the biggest part of this story, right, the Kuminga story and the Jalen Johnson story, is that they were playing the Wizards. You got to take that. You got to take that for what it is. Obviously, I think this is a concern for Jalen Johnson. He's missed a ton of time. In his career. So, obviously not due to this injury. It's not like one leads to another, but this is a guy that has struggled to stay on the court consistently. I think the Hawks are pushing for a play-in spot right now, so that they don't really have an opportunity to be super cautious when they're not playing, the Wizards. So I do think that, he's going to try to push through this if he's able to. That might lead to some efficiency concerns. That might lead to, some poor outings every now and again. Obviously, if in an hour or two we hear that he's going to be reevaluated in a week or two, I think Jonathan Kuminga needs to be picked up. Even though I've been on the Jonathan Kuminga hype train since he was drafted. I think he's a great player. I don't think he's going to be scoring 30 points in 20 minutes every night if Jalen Johnson misses a bunch of time, right? So I think we pump the brakes a little bit on Kuminga, but he is a must add if Johnson misses a bunch of time. If Johnson misses time, I also would look at Mohamed Gay. Gay is a very rangy defender. He could get a ton of rebounds and a ton of defensive stats if you're looking for that. But obviously, like you said, they played the Wizards last night. They didn't need Jalen Johnson for that game. Maybe they give him another night off. So this is just a wait and see approach, and we'll get an update on Jalen Johnson in the next couple of hours.
What a cushy debut spot for Kuminga there, giving him that run in the blowout against the Wizards. So good news there for Kuminga. Some more good news. Dejounte Murray, remember him? He made his season debut for the Pelicans on Tuesday against the Warriors. He started. He played 25 minutes. He finished with 13 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and a three-pointer. There's lots to unpack from this game. Now, Jeremiah Fears played 21 minutes. Jordan Poole played 23 minutes. DeAndre Jordan started and played 22 minutes, yet Derek Queen, who they traded a first-round pick, which is going to be a very high first-round pick for, played 18 minutes. Kirien, are the Pelicans a mess for fantasy?
Yeah, absolutely a mess for fantasy. I don't want to spoil too much. A little bit of a foreshadowing to what was that stat line of the week. But yeah, the Pelicans are a mess right now. Trey Murphy's dealing with a shoulder injury, which just makes things even worse. Sadiq Bey was really fun at one point. It's really hard to trust anything. And then Herbert Jones had 5 steals last night too. What are we supposed to do with that? Does that mean anything? Probably not. But yeah, total mess. I'll get more into it during the what was that.
I'll say this. I don't feel good about any of those 3 guards, Murray, Fears, and Poole. I don't want any of them. There are other silly season tanking guys that I would rather have than those guys because they're all going to take minutes from each other. Fears is not an overly, valuable player even when he's playing a lot. I don't think Murray at any point is going to play much more than 30 minutes a game, if that. Poole is basically points and not a lot else. So I don't think you want any of those guys. And I'm very worried about Trey Murphy. We have seen them shut him down before, and it very well could happen again, don't you think?
Yep, absolutely. They haven't really released an update, but I would be treating him as week to week at this point. And yeah, you're absolutely right with the guard rotation. Dejounte Murray, I loved what I saw. He looked, good. He looked athletic. He looked 100%. But they're going to be cautious with him, and he's going to be cautious with himself. And even on a night when he looked good, played 25 minutes, that stat line, you can find that on the waiver wires. Half the Memphis team gets that when they play the Kings, right?
Exactly. It's crazy to say this because it's almost March. Really, the only guy in the Pelicans that I feel great about right now is probably Zion.
Yep.
Because he's not resting. They're playing him a lot. And probably behind him is Bey because even he's still playing a lot of minutes. So I think there's more, especially if Murphy's going to be out. Bey's going to get those minutes regardless. It's not a fun fantasy situation. And before we move on to our second segment, we've got one last bit of news here. Amen Thompson is not going to play in tonight's game against the Kings. He is out with left quadriceps tendonitis. However, this will only be his second missed game of the season and is the first game of a back-to-back set against a bad team. So, Kirien, we're probably not worried about Amen Thompson, but we are excited for Reed Sheppard in DFS, right?
Yeah, the tendonitis stuff is always difficult. What does it mean? Does it mean this has been a lingering injury and it got worse that it got to a point where he needs to take some time off, or is it just something that like flared up overnight and he's a young kid, give him 24 hours and he's going to be just fine? Wait and see approach, but yeah, leaning more towards not worried. I want to be excited about Reed Sheppard. Like I said, Scoot Henderson, Jonathan Kuminga, Reed Sheppard. It's like my preseason preview. All my top guys are finally getting silly season run here at the biggest moment. But we just can't trust Ime Udoka to give Reed Sheppard the role that we have all been waiting for, right? When the shot's falling, he gets his minutes, but the Sheppard experience rolls on no matter who's in and out of the starting lineup. I would expect Reed to start tonight, but when he does start, it doesn't really matter whether he starts or he comes off the bench. It's all a matter of if his shots are falling and if he's playing correct defense. So it's just a game-by-game situation with Reed, even with Thompson out of the lineup tonight.
I think a more appropriate injury designation for Thompson tonight might have been playing the Kings itis, because I'm really not worried about this whatsoever. So now Kirien and I are going to talk about, there's all these guys that we want to add off waivers because teams are tanking. But we have to drop someone to do that. So we're going to discuss 5 players, and we're going to see whether or not we should be holding on to them or dropping them. But before we do that, a word from our friends at Sling. Tired of paying for live TV you don't watch? With Sling, you can get the live sports, news, and entertainment you want only when you want it. Get your hands on a Sling 1-day, 3-day, or 7-day pass starting at just $4.99. Get over 30 of your favorite channels for the best price and stop overpaying for full-time live TV plans. Sling has a pass for any occasion. Big game tonight? Grab a 1-day pass for just $4.99. Want a full week of live TV for one low price? Get a 7-day Sling pass. And for all those weekend watchers out there, you can enjoy live sports, news, and entertainment with a 3-day Sling pass. Only Sling lets you watch when you want, so you only pay for what you watch. Watch live TV on your terms, starting at just $4.99. Sling lets you do that. Use our link in the description below to sign up for Sling today. All right, Kirien, we got to talk about some guys here, whether or not we should hold them or drop them so we can add that hot waiver wire player. First off, we're going to start with Daniel Gafford. Now, Gafford has been on the injury report a lot lately. However, he has played in 12 straight games for the Mavericks. Unfortunately, he only averaged 23 minutes a game during that span, leaving him with averages of 8.6 points, 6.2 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks. What are you doing with Daniel Gafford?
I'm dropping Daniel Gafford. I mean, obviously, outside of like 16-team leagues, maybe you can hold him, but even 14-team leagues, I think he's a drop. He's played 30-plus minutes only twice this season. You mentioned the stats in his recent games. Over his last 6, only 7 points and 5 rebounds per game, and that's rounding up, folks. The defensive production and efficiency are still there. But when you're only taking 7 shots and you're making 5 of them, does that really help you in the field goal percentage that much? And his counting stats are easily replaceable by picking up someone off waivers. Tristan Vukovic, plenty of guys. Maxime Reynaud is a much better option than Daniel Gafford. I'm sure he got his roster in a ton of leagues right now, but basically any big guy that pops into the streaming surface is going to give you at least equal production to what Gafford is giving you on a nightly basis, and you can't trust Gafford to play consistently.
You could drop Gafford for his teammate Marvin Bagley, who's averaging 13.5 points and 8.8 rebounds since being traded to the Mavericks. I would much rather have Bagley than Gafford. I'm with you, Kirien. Daniel Gafford is a drop. Our next guy on this list, and this one might be a little painful for us, Kirien, because we like him. Jaylon Tyson of the Cleveland Cavaliers has come off the bench in 4 straight games. Now, over those 4 games, he averaged 8.8 points and 4.5 rebounds. The big thing you don't like to see is he only averaged 21 minutes in those 4 games. The Cavs are healthy right now. They added James Harden and Dennis Schroeder, and they only got rid of Darius Garland, who wasn't playing for them anyways. So what do we think about Jaylon Tyson moving forward?
Yeah, this is tough because I think, Jaylon Tyson kind of outplayed DeAndre Hunter to get this big role, and then they traded DeAndre Hunter, and then they bring in Keon Ellis, Dennis Schroeder, and James Harden. And I don't think we can overlook what Keon Ellis brings to this Cleveland backcourt, especially bringing in a guy like James Harden. You need a defensive presence off the bench. Lonzo Ball couldn't get anything going when he was on the Cavs. So, yeah, I think with Keon Ellis and Schroeder playing close to 20 minutes a night, Jaylon Tyson is a drop. There's just not going to be enough minutes. Jaylon Tyson was a pretty solid source of assists for a large portion of the season. Over the last 8 games, which surprisingly coincides with James Harden coming over, Jaylon Tyson is averaging 0.9 assists per game. So that's just tough. You're not going to get the defensive stats because Keon Ellis and Schroeder are coming in there for the defense. Maybe you get some spot up threes every once in a while, but you're just never going to have the ball in your hand if you're Jaylon Tyson. So sadly, Jaylon Tyson is a drop for me in the majority of leagues. I just don't see the minutes or the usage being there.
Are you saying a guy playing alongside James Harden is not going to get the ball much? Jeez, what a shock. I'm with you. Jaylon Tyson is a drop. Kirien, we haven't had many Bulls minutes because the Bulls stink. They've lost 10 games in a row, and there's not a lot to talk about. So how about we coin this the former Bull minute? We're going to talk about DeMar DeRozan. He's averaged just 15.6 points, 2.3 rebounds, and 3.3 assists over his last 10 games. Normally an efficient shooter, he shot just 40.7% from the field over that 10-game span. Big concern, averaged just 26 minutes. The Kings are getting blown out on a regular basis, so DeRozan could be looking at limited minutes down the stretch here, even if he plays in games. Kirien, what are you doing with our former Bull, DeMar DeRozan?
Well, yeah, I will just, to continue this not Bulls minute here, Buzelis career high last night. So we'll just throw that out.
There we go. There we go.
But yeah, DeMar DeRozan, this one's interesting for me. I was off DeMar before the season, so I don't have any shares of him. So it's not like I've had to deal with him. If you've held him to this point, it's really hard for me to justify dropping him now. I think, there's an interesting conversation to have, like, when we hop off of this show, if Jalen Johnson gets ruled out for 2 weeks, would you rather have Jonathan Kuminga or DeMar DeRozan? I would probably rather have Jonathan Kuminga at that point. But right now, like, DeMar, he's still playing in games at least. Like you said, the minutes aren't quite there, but he's still, like, giving you some production. This is all depending on, like, where you are in your standings and what you're looking for. If you're sitting in, top 3 seed and you've had DeMar the entire season, yeah, he's probably a solid baseline player for you. If you're sitting outside of the playoffs, you probably want to drop DeMar DeRozan, go out and get Gigi Jackson or some guy that just has, maybe he goes off for 30 points tonight. Maybe he gets, 30 and 10, because DeMar he's a solid average player at this point. And especially without the minutes, he's a replaceable player, but he's also, a borderline, starter. So I'm going to say hold here, but I'm certainly going to leave the door open for many cases where you can drop him and add him in shallower league, or add someone off waivers in shallower leagues.
Here's my strategy with DeRozan. If you have him right now, shop him to a manager who needs some scoring. They might still think of him as, he's still averaging 18 points a game for the season, so he's still getting points. So you could try that and take anything of use that you can get back. If you can't get anything, I am okay with dropping him. I don't think DeRozan is going to get rested. He's played at least 70 games in 3 straight seasons. He's a guy that prides himself at being on the floor every night. However, I don't think he's got any shot at playing more than 30 minutes on a regular basis. I think we're looking at between 25 and 27 minutes a night for him moving forward. He's going to get you 15 or 16 points a game, 2 rebounds and 2 assists. I'd much rather get one of these other tanking silly season young guys and get help in other categories, because DeRozan doesn't really even get you threes either. Yeah. So it's literally points. And if he's not shooting 50% from the field, he's really not doing hardly anything for you. So it feels weird to say, because he's been such a good player and he's so established, but I would be okay with dropping DeMar DeRozan. Now, we're going to move on to the Boston Celtics, Kirien. Queta. What are we doing with Queta? Since they acquired Nikola Vucevic, he has started all 6 games, but he's only played 22 minutes a night, averaging 7.8 points, 8.8 rebounds, and 1 block. He did have a very good game last night, which helped his averages there. But he's just not getting the minutes that he was before that Vucevic acquisition. What do you feel about him at this point?
Yeah, so similarly, I think Queta, back-to-back double-doubles, 5 blocks during that 2 games. I'm going to say hold here, and I think he has more upside than DeRozan does. The only reason I'm doing this is my gut instincts tells me that Missoula is going to prioritize defense more often than not. And when he prioritizes defense, that means Queta over Vucevic. As we know, not Bulls minute. Vucevic can't play any defense. So I feel like
a lot
more
of not
often
Bulls minutes today. We're doing well
Yeah.
here on the former Bulls.
I'm just gonna say, I think Missoula and the Celtics are going to prioritize defense more often than not. So I think Queta is going to, have more value than Vucevic. And I think the upside is there with double doubles and blocks and efficient shooting. But I'm certainly, leaving the door open for, in shallower leagues, moving off of him. I would rather have Queta than Tristan Vukovic if for the next 2 weeks. If Vukovic is like my baseline waiver wire ad, I'd rather have Queta for a couple more weeks.
I don't mind holding him. I'd rather have Marvin Bagley than him, which is weird to say, unless you're desperate for the blocks, because I think Bagley's going to get you the same, if not more rebounds, and he's going to score more. So unless you need the blocks, then you could hold on to Queta. But if not, then I would go after someone like Bagley. But it's of all the ones that we've talked about so far, I think he's the best one to make a case for holding until maybe our final guy here, Kirien, Donte DiVincenzo. Across 6 games since the Timberwolves acquired Ayo DiVincenzo, boy, these are some great names to say back-to-back. Ayo Dosunmu, Donte DiVincenzo. He's averaged only 8.8 points in those 6 games since they got Ayo. However, during that span, he also averaged 4 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 1.5 steals, and 2.3 3-pointers. He played 28 minutes a night. So he's not getting you the scoring, Kirien, but are you still holding on to DiVincenzo because of the other production that he's been providing?
Yeah, the steals and the assists have really been there recently. Obviously he's a good free throw shooter, but he never gets to the free throw line. This is another similar one like the last 2 guys where, if it depends on where you are in the standings. If you're outside of the playoffs right now and you have Donte DiVincenzo on your team, I would rather have Scoot Henderson because Scoot can give you a boost and maybe get you into the playoffs. But again, if you're riding high and you're cruising to the playoffs, DiVincenzo is a fine player to hold because he gives you a solid baseline. I feel like that I'm copping out here a little bit, but I just I think it all depends on where you are in the standings. I think Donte is a replaceable player at this point in fantasy, right? We haven't seen the big spikes in production, and when you get into the playoffs, you want the high upside, right? When you get into the fantasy playoffs, you're going to be playing the best teams. You're not going to be playing the guy that gave up, 2 months ago because half his team got hurt and you're just going to cruise to an easy win. You need the upside. You need the high points. So I think there's a world where Donte is a drop if you're, looking for higher upside player options.
That's a good point with the Scoot Henderson there. DiVincenzo on this list was probably the guy I felt the best about holding on to, but it's a great point. I think I'd also rather would have Scoot Henderson than Donte DiVincenzo, especially if you're in a points league, because you won't be hurt by the percentages that the bad percentages that he's probably going to provide. So yeah, I like that. If you desperately need the assists and the steals, then I'd keep him. But like Kirien said, I would go, if you get Scoot over him, I would do that. Now, Kirien, before we get to the best segment in all of the podcast universe, we have some great questions in the chat. Let's answer them now.
All righty. We got some good questions. D Wine says, thanks for the show, guys. Rest of season concern with 414 roster injuries in 12 Cat 9 leagues. SGA, Trey Murphy, Deni, Jalen Smith. I'm barely hanging on to first place. Yeah, so me and Mike discussed the concerns about Trey Murphy. This is definitely a major concern, and you can't assume that he's going to be back and playing, consistent minutes anytime soon. This is his shooting shoulder that he's dealing with this soreness. Major concern there. Jalen Smith, Mike, I'll let you take the mic here. Calf injury is not good, right?
We'll make this the official Bulls minute. Yeah, Jalen Smith, the calf keeps cropping up. I mean, it's something he's been dealing with for well over a month now. There's no reason for the Bulls to push him.
Yeah.
Good thing they got rid of Ousmane Deng for Nick Richards, because this is a great situation for Nick Richards. Old man Nick Richards, while Ousmane Dieng is showing some great promise with the Bucks. We're going to watch Yabusele and Nick Richards on the Bulls. But yeah, I think Jalen Smith is a drop, simply because I don't think he can play more than 20, 24 minutes a night. So I think he's going to be in that range even when he comes back. And I'm not sure that's enough to warrant holding him onto when you've got guys like SGA, Trey Murphy, and Deni, like you're talking about here, D-Wine, that you've got to hold on to. So Jalen Smith would be a drop for me. and then I would start streaming that roster spot.
Yeah, and the rest of the 3 guys, you just gotta wait and
Yeah,
see.
you grin and bear it, and
yeah.
you hope that they come back. I mean, SGA is probably the one that might be back first.
Yeah.
So if you get him back, he says his playoffs here start in 10 days. You might get him back for that. But a lot of this is the timing with the playoffs, and you hope that your roster is healthy at the right time. And unfortunately, here, D1, you've got a great roster, but the timing might not be great.
Yeah, and like Mike said, SJ is probably going to be the first one back. I think it's 8 games he can miss until he's not eligible. So I expect him to be back sometime next week.
Yeah.
Yo Joe though says drop Ayton, Donte, or Kamara for Queta. So a couple of guys that we talked about in this I would probably go Donte, Queta, Kamara, Ayton if I was ranking these 4 players. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, you could drop Ayton for Queta. I have no problem with that. Ayton's not doing anything great. I mean, if you're dropping Donte and Kamara, you're getting a very different kind of player.
True.
In Queta. So I think if you're looking at that, I would drop Ayton and then keep Donte and Kamara.
Yeah, Ayton will have the occasional pop game, but I just like the upside of the other players more. Oh, do you guys G Diver says, do you guys think it's worth holding Huff, or is it better to stream his spot? Playoffs start next week, 9-cat, 12-team head-to-head. Well, I think, head-to-head, you could win blocks strictly with J Huff alone, right? So I think that it all depends on the rest of your roster construction, G Diver. If you're comfortable, being able to win without J Huff's blocks in a head-to-head, then I think you can make this move, but you could just be losing a category by dropping him too, right? Does that make sense? Like keeping him on your roster, you could win that. Dropping him, you could easily lose that. So it all depends on what the rest of your roster is. What are you doing with J Huff?
I co-sign exactly what you just said there. If you need blocks, keep them. If you don't, go for someone with higher overall upside.
Cool. Andy Cruz says, would you guys trade Gideon DeMar for Scotty 10-team games cap points league? Yes. Yep.
I could not do that fast enough. If you have that trade sitting in your box there, my gosh, click accept. I posted something the other day on X. Josh Giddey has not played at least 30 minutes in a game since the day after Christmas. Okay? The day after Christmas. We were all slouched in our chairs with wrapping paper everywhere, and our kids running around hopped up on candy canes and Hershey Kisses, all right? That's how long it's been. And I'm telling you, he's not going to play more than 30 minutes a night moving forward because the Bulls the Bulls want to lose games. They have a chance, okay? They have a chance that they could pass the Grizzlies and the Mavericks in the tanking standings. They've already passed the Bucks. There's no way they're catching the Bucks because the Bucks are trying. So they have a chance to drop 1 or 2 more spots. So I don't think there's any chance that Giddey plays a lot. And we already talked about DeMar DeRozan. I would much, much, much rather have Scotty Barnes.
Yep, absolutely co-signed. Machiavelli the God. Thoughts on Westbrook rest of season? He had a great rebound game last time, but not sure if he's a keeper. Yeah, let me just pull up Westbrook's game log here because, so he 21 minutes February 9th, missed a game, came back after the All-Star break, 17 minutes, 21 minutes, and then 33 minutes. So the first 2 games after the All-Star break, he totaled 12 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists in 2 games. And then in his most recent game, he had 25 points and 7 assists. Similarly to DeMar DeRozan, I think, if you've kept him to this point, you probably need to just roll with the punches here. But he's definitely a replaceable player if you're looking for a higher upside at this point. I think there's going to be plenty of games where Westbrook is, closer to 20 minutes than he is to 30 minutes.
Completely agree. He's a drop for me. There's going to be so many blowouts. And that's why his minutes are down because they're getting blown out. So there's going to be so many of those between now and the rest of the season. So I'd much rather get somebody else.
All righty. A couple more questions here. Our guy Matt Carmody says, hey guys, would you rather have Ace Bailey, Melton, or Nick Clifford rest of season? Yahoo Points League. This is interesting.
I like this question.
Yeah, I've said this multiple times. If we knew Melton was going to play back-to-backs, I think it would easily be Melton. But he doesn't, so I don't think we can say Melton here. Ace Bailey has been really, really solid recently, but then he had the big dud. This is tough. I'm just gonna say my gut instinct tells me Clifford gives you the highest upside just because he can do a little bit more of everything. I guess it's a points league. I'm just gonna say Clifford is my gut instinct. How about you, Mike?
I'm going to go Ace Bailey.
Yeah.
I just think there's eventually Larry Markkinen is going to get shut down here too. And Ace Bailey's going to play a lot. He did say it's a points league, so Clifford and his terrible shooting percentages don't hurt as much there, so that's good. But I just think Bailey, this is the Jazz's time to let him go crazy. We're not going to see a whole lot of Larry Markkinen. We're not going to see a whole lot of Keontae George. So it's going to be a lot of Ace Bailey, Isaiah Collier, and Kyle Filipowski down the stretch.
Yeah, that's totally fair. It definitely comes down to Bailey and Clifford for me. And yeah, I think that one recent dud for Bailey is just kind of throwing me off. If he had another 15-point game, I would have said all of this. Look at this consistent.
He had an off night. What is he, 19, 20 years old?
Yeah.
Give him a break, Kirien. What were you doing at 19 or 20? You weren't playing NBA basketball. Give him a break.
Yeah, but this, I feel like Clifford, if he has a bad scoring night, he can supplement that with some steals and defense production a little bit more. But that's a very good question, Matt. But yeah, no issues with taking Bailey in that situation. Roger that says, is Kawhi a shutdown risk? Is he worth trading for? No, no, he's not. The Clippers need to win games. They're pushing for a play-in spot.
They're going to make the play-in by default. No one else below them in the West is trying.
Yes,
no one can catch them.
Yeah.
So they're going to make it by default. I mean, boy, I'll tell you, one of the biggest winners of the trade deadline is Bennedict Mathurin, because he went from probably not playing on the Pacers to playing all the time on the Clippers and being a very important part of the team because no Garland. So Kawhi is going to play a lot. I would definitely try to trade for him if you can. I wouldn't give up some of your best players because there's always that injury risk. But if you can get him for a reasonable return, yeah, I would do that.
Yep, totally agree.
Let's do one more, Kirien.
All right, Eric 44. Yeah, just real quick, you mentioned Bennedict Mathurin, Scoot Henderson, Jonathan Kuminga, Reed Shepherd, Bennedict Mathurin. That's like my all-time starting four right there.
Oh yeah, Kirien's Super Bowl come a couple weeks later.
Would you think Bilal Coulibaly would be the best punt field goal percentage upside pickup, or who would you recommend for that? Yeah, Coulibaly is. I think that's fine, but nobody in Washington is going to be playing over 30 minutes for the rest of the season.
No.
So I would say Nick Clifford. If Clifford is available, just like I said in the previous comment, he can get tons of steals, tons of rebounds, tons of assists. And you don't really have to worry about the field goal percentage at all, and he can get you some points. Really, thank you. Big thanks for all the questions, guys. Really,
a lot of great questions this week. Thank you, everyone. And now it's time for the What Was That stat lines of the week. Kirien, you are up first.
All right. Well, I foreshadowed at the beginning of the show, after not seeing the court since October 29th, the veteran DeAndre Jordan drew the start on Saturday against Andre Drummond and the 76ers. Jordan went out and grabbed 15 rebounds, blocked 4 shots, played 31 minutes. Mike, watching Drummond and Jordan go at it gave me major 2010 vibes. I thought it was going to be a one-off. Jordan starting was going to be a one-off, and then after the convincing win over the 76ers, James Borrego kept DeAndre Jordan in the starting lineup. Like you said, threw in Dejounte Murray, sending Derek Queen to the bench. It worked. The Pelicans won again. I can't imagine this is really helping Derek Queen's development. Certainly not helping fantasy managers at all. But DeAndre Jordan's big stat line from Saturday certainly deserved a What Was That? But I think the real award goes to James Borrego for just his roster management the whole season. The Pelicans' entire season deserves a What Was That? So this was just give DeAndre Jordan the medal, but it goes to the whole team, especially the coach.
That's almost a fireable offense.
Yeah.
To put your top Derek Queen, to put him on the bench for the corpse that is DeAndre Jordan. I mean, great for Jordan. He had a good couple of games. He's playing a lot. Good for him. But,
and one more thing. Yeah, one more thing. I don't know if you saw this, but it was after the Saturday game in the post-game press conference. Borrego was asked a question, and he was like, "I was just laying awake at night. I couldn't fall asleep. And what does the team need? The team needs more rebounding. Who's the best rebounder on the team? DeAndre Jordan." So he had this premonition before bed, I must start DeAndre Jordan. I he needs to have his mentals checked. I know the NBA season is a long season, but if you're laying in bed thinking about how DeAndre Jordan can save you in 2026, then you got a lot more problems.
That is not good. For my what was that stat line of the week, I'm going to go to Monday's Kings-Grizzlies game and talk about all these no-name players that had great stat lines. Now, we know Precious Achiuwa, okay? We know him. He had 22 points and 12 rebounds. We didn't expect that. Javon Small of the Grizzlies, who was a second-round pick in the 2025 draft, had 21 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, and 4 three-pointers in 25 minutes. Ryan Rupert, who I checked how to say his last name, Ryan Rupert of the Grizzlies, who was on a 10-day contract, almost had a double-double. He had 10 points, 9 assists, and 3 steals over 26 minutes. And maybe one of my new favorite names, Daquan Plowden of the Kings, who was on a 2-way contract, had 19 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 three-pointers over 26 minutes. If you played any of these 3 guys in DFS or had the intestinal fortitude to stream them in fantasy, congratulations. Silly season is in full swing. We're going to continue to see guys like this come out of nowhere, especially in these matchups between 2 bad teams. Is it fun to try and figure out which 2-way or 10-day contract guy to stream on a nightly basis? Of course not. However, these guys and the Kings and Grizzlies, what was that? More like, who was that?
That was excellent. Yeah, the silly season is in full swing. And whether you're in a rotisserie league, a head-to-head league, points league, category league, whatever, you make moves right now that will absolutely change the outcome of your season. So be on the lookout and tune into the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Show whenever you can, so we can help you win your leagues.
That's right. And with that, that is the end of today's RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Sling. Remember, use promo code YouTube15 on rotowire.com to get 15% off any subscription. Thank you, everyone in the chat, for providing their questions for the show. We're going to be in March next. Next podcast will be the month of March. But don't worry. Kirien and I are ready to help you with all these no-name guys on the Kings and the Grizzlies and the Wizards. I shouldn't say no name, especially if their mothers hear this. They'd be pretty upset. They mean a lot.
Daquan Plowden, his mother, is listening to the podcast.
That's right. I heard. She was in the chat. Didn't you see it? We'll get to that question on the next pod. Until then, everybody, good luck with your leagues, and we'll talk to you next week.
Good luck, everybody.